So, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for being here today. My name is Raquel Miko Melguizo. I'm one of the national contact points for the Maria Sklodowska reactions in the UK. And together with me, I have my lovely colleague Anja Berndt, who is the other national contact point for the Maria Sklodowska reactions. Today, we have the pleasure to have with us Eugen Stulz. He's an associate professor in bioorganic and materials chemistry at the University of Southampton. And Eugen was awarded 2 doctoral networks in the last round, one of them being the coordinator. So moving on to the agenda of today, just a reminder that all participants will be muted for the duration of the webinar. The chat function is disabled, so please use the Q&A function to submit your questions, and we'll try to answer them throughout the webinar. And right at the end, there is a dedicated session for that. And a reminder that the session is being recorded. So today we will provide you with an introduction to UKRO, what we do and how we can support you and your application, the UK's relationship with the EU. We'll provide an overview of the Doctoral Networks 2025 call, the submission and evaluation process, any practical considerations when it comes to your proposal development. And then we'll hand over to Eugen, who will be covering or will go through his experience in applying and successfully securing 2 doctoral network awards in the last round. As I said, we'll have a dedicated session for Q&A, but please feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll try to answer them as we go along. In terms of what we do and the support that we provide, so we support UK-based organisations that are involved in European research and innovation. Our mission is to maximise the UK's participation in Horizon Europe, which is the European Key Research and Innovation Programme. We have a dedicated UKRO portal where you will find news articles, events, fact sheets to support your participation and application. We have alerts to upcoming funding opportunities and call updates. So if there are any changes announced by the Commission, they are there. We are also appointed by the UK government to give free and impartial advice on the European Research Council, the Maria Sklodowska Action Programme, the widening participation, the European Cooperation in Science and Technology, best known as the COSH Action. And new in the House is the new European Bauhaus, and we are part of the UKRO international team. So, as many of you know, the UK associated to Horizon Europe and Copernicus on the 1st of January 2024, which means that UK entities can participate and also coordinate projects receiving funding from Horizon Europe, with the exception of the European Innovation Council Accelerator Investment Fund. And as you've probably seen on the news, there are even more opportunities available to UK researchers and innovators in areas as quantum, space, technology. And UKRO website has information on all of that and upcoming European funding opportunities. So what association means for the Maria Sklodowska reaction. So for the doctoral networks, UK-based organisations can participate as beneficiary as opposed to associated partner where we're in the transition period of association. We can coordinate projects again. We can recruit doctoral candidates, we can award PhD, we can host secondments. And just a reminder that recruited doctoral candidates will count towards the total number of person months. So while we were in the interim of association, our participation came on top of the maximum allowance. So moving on to the Maria Sklodowska reactions and to put things into perspective, I don't know how familiar you are with Horizon Europe. At Horizon Europe, I will provide a very brief overview of the program. So Horizon Europe is the EU flagship program for research and innovation. It runs from 2021 to 2027, so it's a 7-year framework program and has a budget of 95.5 billion euro. That doesn't include the contribution made by associated countries such as the UK, New Zealand, Canada, etc. As you can see on the screen, the Horizon Europe consists of three main pillars, which reflects the current research and innovation priorities of the Union, and has an additional transversal element right at the bottom, which is focusing on widening participation and in strengthening the European research area. So pillar number one, which is where the Maria Sklodowska action sits, is mainly focused on fellowship schemes. Those are bottom-up funding opportunities or any field of research. And within that is the Maria Sklodowska actions that supports the mobility of research. There is an allocated budget for the Maria Sklodowska action of 6.6 billion euros. Moving on to pillar two is the collaborative funding opportunities around clusters or thematic areas. Those are more top-down and impact-driven. And pillar number three is the funding for innovation, and the biggest part of it is the European Innovation Council. For the purpose of this information webinar, we'll focus on the Maria Sklodowska reactions, which sits within pillar number one. Just to put the scheme into context, here's some figures for the Maria Sklodowska reaction schemes in Horizon 2020, which is the previous framework program for research and innovation in Europe. So more than 65,000 researchers were recruited through Maria Sklodowska reaction. That also includes 25,000 PhD candidates. Approximately 40% of those researchers were from outside the EU, 42% were female researchers. More than 1,000 doctoral programs were funded, more than 5,000 companies were supported, and 12 Nobel Prizes winners were involved in Maria Sklodowska reaction, either as a supervisor or a fellow. And under Horizon 2020, you will be pleased to know that the UK was the best performing country for the Maria Sklodowska reactions, representing around 20% of the participation in the programme. So there are different type of actions within the Maria Sklodowska scheme. So the one that we'll be covering today is the doctoral networks, which are the doctoral programs in and outside academia, including the joint and industrial doctorates. There is a total budget allocation of 597.80 million euros, which, if you can see the rest of the schemes, the budgets, the one that follows quite closely is the postdoctoral fellowship, but the other ones get a very less budgets than the doctoral networks. So the budget allocation, it gets almost half of the budget allocation. The call is now open, and deadline for that one is the 25th of November 2025. So some of the key features for the Maria Sklodowska reactions for all of them is developing researchers through training, gaining new skills and career development at all the stages of career. They are open to all research domains, so those follow the bottom-up approach. They follow the 3 I's: international, intersectoral and interdisciplinary mobility. They offer attractive working and employment conditions, and they have an impact on organizations through excellent programs, and they offer strong collaboration with industries and SMEs. So focusing on the Doctoral Network 2025 call and the scheme in itself, is the Doctoral Network is just one consortium, which is based off collaborative research projects implemented through individual PhD projects. The consortia should be multidisciplinary, multisectoral and international. And the aim is to train creative, entrepreneurial, innovative and resilient doctoral candidates while undertaking a shared research project. There is an example on the right-hand side that you can see where there is a minimum of 3 beneficiaries. We'll cover that in the next slides, but minimum of 3 beneficiaries, one from a member state, with at least one of them being from a member state. They can recruit 1 to PhD projects, and then they can be seconded to different institutions, which we'll also see in the next slide. So there are different types of participants, and that will make an impact on their role in the projects. So we have beneficiaries and associated partners. The beneficiaries and associated partners can both come from academic or non-academic, so industry. Only the beneficiaries do sign the grant agreement. Only the beneficiaries can recruit the researchers, but both the beneficiaries and the associated partners can train and host the seconded researchers. They can both participate in the supervisory board, but only the beneficiaries can claim the cost. And one of the questions that we get asked quite often is how do the associated partners can get funding for that? Normally, there is a partnership agreement between the beneficiaries and the associated partners to transfer part of the funds, but we'll cover that in more detail later on. So on the right-hand side, you can see that there is another example in there where there is a minimum of 3 beneficiaries, with one of them being from a member state, and then they can have secondments to associated partners that can be anywhere in the world and in any sector. So in terms of the type of networks that are available, there are 3 types of networks, and they offer a slightly different approach to all of them, but the essence is the same, is developing or delivering a research project, the training of researchers or doctoral candidates. So let's start with the first one, the doctoral network, which is the standard doctoral network, is the innovative doctoral training in academia or industry. The maximum duration of the project is 48 months, and the PhD duration has a minimum of 3 with a maximum of 36 months. In terms of secondments, they can be anywhere in the world, but can only have up to 1/3 of the fellowship duration. And then there is the industrial doctorates, which are doctoral trainings in academia and industry. There is a joint supervision between the academic and non-academic organization. The project duration is the same, 48 months, and the PhD duration, maximum and minimum duration is exactly the same. So 3 months is the minimum, maximum 36 months. The main difference is there are no limits on secondment duration, and the minimum and the fellowship has to spend a minimum of 50% in the non-academic sector. It could be more if it makes sense for the project. So it's really entirely up to you how much is spent on the non-academic sector. And the non-academic sector can be beneficiary or associated partner. It could be either or. So moving on to the joint doctorates, the integrated doctoral training leading on to joint, double or multiple doctoral degrees. They sort of jointly participate in the admission, in the selection, in the training, and in the supervision of the PhD awarding institutions. The maximum duration, and this is the main difference, is 60 months, and the PhD can have a maximum duration of 48 months. Again, there are no limits on secondment durations, and they can enroll in joint or double multiple PhD, with at least one of them being based on an EU member state or associated countries. This is new for the 2025 core, where before there had to be 2 EU member state or associated countries. Now you can have 1 EU member state, an associated country, and an associated partner as part of the awarding of the enrollment of their joint or double PhD. So moving on to the next slides, the doctoral candidates, in terms of the eligibility criteria, they're often referred as early stage researchers. So if you see throughout the presentation ESR, so early stage researcher. The supported researcher must be a doctoral candidate, so they can't be in possession of a doctoral degree at the date of the recruitment. The ESR must be recruited and enrolled in a doctoral program that will lead to the award of a doctoral degree in at least 1 member state or associated country. That for the industrial doctorate, we covered that in the previous slides, but I will reiterate that again. The ESR must have spent a minimum of 50% of the fellowship and non-academic sector. That's the minimum, but it could be more if needed. And the recruited researchers can be of any nationality. That can be from anywhere in the world. And very importantly, they need to comply with the mobility rule. So they can't have resided or carried out the main activity, work, studies, etc. in the country of the recruiting beneficiary for more than 12 months in the 36 months immediately before the recruited date. And one of the questions that we get asked quite often is, when does the period of residence start? And it starts the day that you arrive to the country, or the doctoral candidate arrives in the country. So if they arrive to the country to look for an apartment, the period of residence will start from then, and it ends the day they leave. So date of flights, train tickets, visas can be provided as proof or evidence. Compulsory national service, short stays such as holidays and the time spent by the researcher as part of a procedure of obtaining refugee status under the Geneva Convention are not taken into account. So if you go on holiday for 2 months or a month and a half to the country, that won't be taken into account. But if you do your main activity in the country for 3 months, it will be taken into account. A bit of a deadline. So the call is now open, as we mentioned, and the deadline for submission is the 25th of November at 5 p.m. Brussels time, so 4 p.m. UK time. Please do remember that, as if you submit your application 1-2 minutes later, it won't be eligible. So it will be rejected straight away. So please bear that in mind. You'll be notified of the outcome of your application in April 2026. And it's likely that you will be signing the grant agreement, if successful, in July 2026, with the project due to start in September 2026. One thing to mention is that you can submit your application as often as you need to, up to the deadline. So please upload a draft that you're happy with, and then you can carry on updating the draft all the way until 3:59 on the 25th of November. So let's move on to the budget and the allocation and what the cost can be spent on. So all the Maria Sklodowska career actions are based on unit cost, and 1 unit cost, it means 1 month of eligible doctoral candidates. The total costs are the cost per unit multiplied by the number of units, and it's 100% reimbursement rate for the eligible beneficiaries. There are 2 different cost categories, which are the researcher costs, which are in pink on the slides, and also the institutional costs, which are the costs allocated to research, training, networking, and management, which are in blue. Moving on to the next slide. So the ESR unit costs, there are 3 different types of costs. One of them is the living allowance. It's a fixed cost, so it's 4,010 euros, and that multiplies for the country coefficient, correction coefficient, sorry, and that's for the UK, 141.7%. So you will be multiplying the 4,010 by that number, and then that will be paid out together as a salary. The living allowance, the mobility allowance, if applicable, the family allowance is subject to compulsory deductions under the national law. So any social security contribution will be deducted from that amount. One thing to mention is that UK institutions, just bear in mind that that will be paid in euros to the institution itself, but the institution will be paying you in British pounds. So normally the UK institutions apply a conservative exchange rate, and that's to protect the institution and the fellow from fluctuations in exchange rates. So it's important that you discuss that with your institutions to know what sort of exchange rate they use and how much you will get paid per month. This is usually lead to an underpayment, which normally is corrected at the end of the fellowship with a lump sum payment. We also have the living allowance, which there are 2 types, depending on what sort of employment status. You will apply one coefficient or the other. So for the industrial and joint doctorates, The coefficient needs to be considered when calculating the requested ESR unit cost for the living allowance. So if you have an ESR employed 100% by a beneficiary and sent to another beneficiary or partner organization on secondment, then we will apply one country correction coefficient. However, if you have an ESR that is recruited separately by each beneficiary for a specific duration, then you need to apply 2 different country correction coefficients. Make sure that that's clear, so you apply the correct country coefficient when recruiting. Moving on to the mobility allowance and family allowance. So the mobility allowance covers the costs related to the researcher's mobility, and then it covers the private costs of the researcher. And then the family allowance is for the researcher if he has any family obligations or if it acquires any family obligations during the duration of the action. And by family obligation, it means marriage, relationship with equivalent status to marriage, recognized by the legislation of the country or region where the relationship was formalized, and dependent children who are being maintained by the researcher. So for example, if you have a candidate, a doctoral candidate that has a joint custody of a child, he will or she will be eligible to claim family allowance. Moving on to the contributions for recruited researchers in terms of long-term leave allowance and a special leave allowance. So the long-term leave allowance is only when leave exceeds the 30 days for reasons other than annual leave. So it could be parental leave, it could be maternity leave, it could be sick leave. So it contributes €4,720. The other allowance will be set to 0, so that will be the only allowance that the fellow or the doctoral candidate will receive. And then whether the beneficiary, depending on the national legislation and internal policies, covers the different, is up to the sort of beneficiaries or the institutions. A special needs allowance contributes to the additional cost for the acquisition of special needs items and service for the researchers with disability, when their participation in the action might not be possible without them. These special need items or services cannot be funded from another source. So if you have a social security funding around to access a lab, you can't really claim the costs under the Maria Slodowska reactions. But however, if you put in a special RAM for the delivery of this project, in that case, you will be able to claim the cost. Likely to be managed by the beneficiary and claim accordingly to internal policies. Moving on to the institutional costs, which was the one that was on the right-hand side when we started the budget section. So we start with the research, training and networking cost, best known as RTN. So they cover the costs related to the research and innovation related activities of the project. So it could be training and networking activities that contribute directly to the researcher's career development. It could be professional cost of the researchers, such as travel expenses, visa costs, NHS surcharges, relocation costs related to starting the fellowships, costs for research expenses, costs arising from optional secondment, visas, etc. And activities must contribute to the research and training program and should be managed by the host institution according to the usual internal policies in terms of travel and purchase policies. And then you have the management and indirect contribution, which cover the general cost of the host institution connected to organizing and implementing the fellowship. It goes from the administrative and financial management to the logistic, ethics, HR, etc. And they are best known as overhead cost. They are managed by the beneficiary according to the usual policies. There is usually an agreement in place to set out the redistribution of funds to associated partners from there to host secondments, placement or short research visits. They can be moved between the beneficiary and redistributed to partners, but that needs to be mentioned in their consortium agreement, not the grant agreement, but the consortium agreement. And it's quite a common practice to appoint or recruit a project manager as part of their project, especially when it's a large consortium. So it's something that it will be mentioned and agreed in the consortium agreement, the redistribution of funds to the coordinator. Moving on to the secondment costs, we often get asked where the secondment costs can come from. So secondment costs in doctoral networks of 6 months or less that requires mobility from the place of residence must be financed using the research, training and networking contributions in order to prevent an unreasonable financial burden for the recruited researcher. At least the travel and the accommodation costs and any other costs. Longer secondments can also be supported in the same way. And the cost that the secondment host incurs as part of the action can be covered by the management indirect costs. And again, this should be mentioned in the consortium agreement. One of the questions is the tuition fees in the UK, especially after Brexit, is how will the international tuition fees affect the recruitment and implementation of the doctoral network? And this is really up to the institutions to determine the tuition fees charged. There is a guidance that sort of provides some information and some frequently asked questions. But it's important that the PhD fellows are treated on equivalent terms as the staff members. They should not be under any circumstances be asked to use their research allowance to pay for tuition fees. Visa fees are eligible costs under the institutional cost budget, and the practices varies by institution. Some universities have introduced an EU fee waivers, or they have offered a reduced amount. So it really depends and varies from institutions to institutions. So talk to your research office to know what they're offering is. And with that, I will hand over to my lovely colleague, Anya, who will cover the submission and evaluation process and any practical matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raquel. Good morning, everyone. Hello to my repeat participants and repeat email senders, and also welcome to the newbies on this here. So, submission. First, you need to go and register in the EU Funding and Tenders portal. We have the link included here. We will publish the slides, so all the links that you see on the slides will be available to you. And if you don't already have one, you will need to create an account. Then, very important step that should be highlighted in bold, get in touch with your research support office. There are several research support office staff, I think, on this call. So please, please, please include them in your preparation. They are the really important people that can help you. Then you go to your application and add the relevant contact people on the online applications, such as the research support office and your partners. And whenever you work on your submission, keep the guide for applicants and the MSCA work program handy in front of you. Have it under your pillow at night and learn it by heart, because this will be your Bible for the next few months. And then, as we mentioned it earlier, submit early and often. The European Commission will only collect what is submitted at the deadline. So if you have a proposal that you think is ready, you can submit it. If you then have an idea of how to make it better, come back, resubmit it, and you will be able to do that. So who's actually involved in the submission process? So we have the coordinator, who registers the draft proposal, who puts in the acronym, the summary, and the panel, who also adds the partner organizations. Please keep in mind you will need the PIC codes. Every legal entity needs a PIC code that is being generated if they sign up to the portal. The coordinator also completes the administrative form, which is part A. We'll come to that later. And is also responsible for uploading parts B1 and B2 as a PDF. Again, I will explain a bit more in detail later. Now, there are then the other beneficiaries. They are also added on the portal, and you add their contacts as appropriate and necessary. It is important that all the beneficiaries are actually aware of the submission and that you make use of your research support offices. They might also be needed for certain sections of part A, but they will have access, so that should be relatively easy for them to do. And then you have associated partners. They do not have access to the submission system. So if you want to provide access, you have to do this via putting their contact details under one of the beneficiaries. So just keep that in mind. So I hope you all had a look at the EU funding and tenders portal before. If not, this is what it looks like. It basically is the one-stop shop for everything the EU and the European Commission does. And under funding, you can search for your calls for proposals. And then you have a filter, a quick search. You either put in MSCA 2025 and then it will come up a list, or you just put Doctoral Network on and it will show you with a link to the actual call page. So it is relatively intuitive. You can't really just make sure you get the right year, that you click on the right year, 2025. And from that on, you should be good. If you look at then the call page, you have to scroll down a bit and it says start a submission and it will guide you through. You will have to click a few links and confirm which one you want to apply to. Again, relatively intuitive. And once you've done this, you come to the actual submission system and you will see a screen like this. So on the top left, you will have all the call information. So this will be your deadline. I cannot say it often enough. It is 5 p.m. Brussels time. So be aware there is a time difference, 1 hour. It's actually 4 p.m. in the UK. Don't get caught out by this. There's all the things about the call name, what's called, then what your proposal, your acronym is called, and your proposal number. Then further down, you have the ability to download the Part B templates. You need to use these templates and no other. They are specific for every call and for every year, so do not submit any Part Bs that are written in a different template. And then at the bottom on the left, you have on your online manual, IT help, email addresses, if you get stuck with the more administrative things. On the right-hand side, you actually find the access to these Part A, the administrative forms. They are completed online. You just click on edit forms and it pops up. And further down, then you have Part B1 and B2 where you can upload them to actual submission. Now, once you add your, once you go to edit Part A, you have to add your partners. Relatively easy. There's a button that says add partner, which means add beneficiary. And then add associated partner, you can add your associated partner. Very simple. Associated partners are generally the ones from countries non-associated to Horizon Europe. Remember, the UK is associated, so we are a beneficiary. Now, on the application itself, So basically, it's a lot of structured data that is entered in the IT system, a lot of things that pre-fill, where you have to click yes or no, or where you have to choose an option. So it's all very structured. You have an acronym and a title for a project. They are not the same. Acronyms are usually the ones that sound a bit awkward. There are acronym finders. Please make use of them. Some acronyms are better than others, but it is absolutely your decision and will not make a difference for the evaluation. You need to select a scientific area, which is then a panel. Again, I'll come to that in a moment. And for this, you have a choice of the MSCA keywords. Please choose according to the best fit. Do not choose according to last year's funding rates or application numbers. Oops. That is not a good choice. Please really choose up to 5 descriptors which best characterize your proposal, and determine which panel or scientific area you want to go in that way. Then you have to write an abstract. That's a maximum of 2,000 characters. That's pretty much standard. And this gets you set up for the other parts. Now, as I said, panel selection. So as an applicant, you have to choose one evaluation panel. This can be chemistry, social sciences and humanities, economic sciences, information science and engineering, environment and geosciences, life sciences, mathematics, or physics. Now, these are quite broad panels. The specificity comes from the keywords you choose according to it, because the keywords will be determining your evaluators. Don't think you're looking at single disciplinary projects. Multidisciplinary projects are still encouraged and can be accommodated. Just make sure that the main focus corresponds to the panel you choose. All the doctoral networks, that includes the industrial and the joint ones, are ranked within their panel. And there is no predefined budget allocation among the panels. This is distributed after the submission. So if you looked at, for example, last year's, you might have had some 50 applications in the chemistry, but this and get a certain funding share, but this might be looking completely different this year. So do not go by last year's numbers. Right, then let's go to the actual proposal forms, part A. This is what you should see when you open them. So you have a bit of a navigation tool. This, I find, takes a bit to familiarize yourself with the way you click through. Then you have in the middle here the sections that need to be completed. You always have a button that tells you what to do, and then you have a bit of guidance. So a lot of these fields, as I said, will be pre-populated using the information that you've already put in when you put your participants' details in, like the PIC, etc. And in a lot of the other fields, there are little question marks where you can find help that tells you how to fill them in. So it looks a bit daunting, but don't be put off. And we are here for you to help as well. As part of the part A, you will need to fill in the budget table. So this is an example with UKRO as a coordinator. Then we have a partner in the UK and an associated partner. Coordinator, obviously, is a beneficiary, where the table says partner, it means beneficiary, and associated partners will be listed as associated. Now, the funding is fully based on unit costs, and these are multiplied by requested person months. So you just need to put in how many researchers you will have, and then the number of person months, and the rest is calculated automatically, saving you a lot of hassle. It automatically assumes that 70% of your doctoral candidates will be eligible for the family allowance when calculating the budget. Although, as we mentioned earlier, things like family allowance and other special allowances can be asked for if and when needed. As I said, you need to put in the number of recruited researchers and the number of person months. If you have a split recruitment, take that into consideration. And you cannot make any changes to the budget line of associated partners because they won't be able to receive any funding. If they bring any funding, you should put that in the part 2 of the proposal. What you also need to answer is some ethics and security questions. And because the UK is not in the EU anymore, UK applicants should answer yes on questions about non-European activity. This is not affecting your eligibility. It's just something you have to do. There is a guidance, for example, on how to complete the ethics self-assessment. If you do click yes, though, you might put in a brief text response with some further explanations, or you might have to upload another document, but that depends on which sections you actually click yes to. And yeah, just make sure that this is also mentioned in part B1 and B2 of your proposal. So the fabled part B, you need to submit both B1 and B2 in the form that we saw earlier. Otherwise, you will not be able to submit. You need to complete all the mandatory tables, use all the subheadings. You can include additional subheadings. Divide your proposal into work packages, and they should reflect the research objectives. Your deliverables should be divided into scientific and management, training, recruitment, and dissemination. And milestones are your control points in the actions that may help to chart progress, and they can be linked to deliverables. So part 1 of B is the start page, table of contents, list of participating organizations, declarations, and has 3 sections, which have a maximum of 30 pages. And in a total, it cannot be longer than 34. Anything that's in excess of 34 will be cut off. There's absolute no flexibility. It will be cut off. It's the hard cut off. So there will be instructions on what font to use, what size, what spacing. Please respect the instructions. Do not try to outsmart it. It doesn't work. You will lose out if you try to outsmart the formatting. Sections 4 and 7 then are addressed in the part B2, and there is no overall page limit in this document, but again, respect the instructions. And in part B, this corresponds exactly to the evaluation criteria of excellence, impact, and implementation. So make it really easy for the evaluators to find the relevant information and actually follow the proposal as it is. Also, there is no restriction on the page limit in part B2, but keep in mind the evaluator, if they want to read a story like War and Peace, or if they want to have a short novel, they might not only read one proposal, but yeah, keep it precise and keep to the point and keep the evaluators happy. As I said, there are formatting rules. So there's a minimum font size of 11. The margins need to be a certain size. Times New Roman is usually the reference font. Literature references should be listed in footnotes. As I said, the formatting will be checked by the RIA, and they will disregard any information provided through hyperlinks. As I said, do not outsmart it. So tables should not be used to circumvent the minimum font size. Do not delete any tags that are in the proposal. And save your files as it is specified. There is a certain naming convention, and please stick to that. This way you don't give the evaluators and also RIA no reason to reject your proposal. Right, so what if it didn't work last year or it won't work this year? So unfortunately, there is a resubmission restriction. So if applicants scored below 80% in the last year's call, they're not eligible to submit a similar proposal in the 2025 call. And a similar proposal is one that is defined that differs from the current one in only minor ways, and in which some of the consortium members are still involved. Now, the RIA system will flag similarities with previous proposals, and applicants may be contacted with a request for details and an explanation of how this proposal is different from the one they submitted last year, and that they shouldn't have resubmitted. There might also be cases where proposals may be double-checked by external experts when it's really critical. And the final eligibility criteria decision is done by the RIA Admissibility and Eligibility Committee, which is appointed for the call evaluation. Right. Now, when you write your proposal and get started, there are a few things you can think about. Now, what is the overarching research questions and how can this be achieved through the individual PhD project? Once you've sorted that, you can think about what are the research objectives. Are they pertinent to the topic? Are they measurable, verifiable, and are they realistic? How does the project go beyond the current state of the art? What novel methods and technology will you be using? Then looking at the training, what skills are needed by the doctoral candidates in the proposed research area? What and where will they be in 4 years and 10 years from now? Think about their long-term employability. This is one of the key aspects of MSCA, making training early stage researchers that they're better employable, that they have better career chances. Now, then also do not forget on how this network will contribute to the Europe's innovation landscape. How will the network increase doctoral training within and beyond the EU? What are you going to do with your results? How will they be exploited and communicated? And then also very important, have you considered research data management, and how have you considered research data management and the gender dimension of your research? Now, when you set up your consortium, you should have lots of conversations as early as possible and agree on how each PhD project will fit into the overall project, the role of each consortium partner, what resources, supervision, and training is needed, how the budget will be allocated. This is very important. I think one of the most amount of queries we get is on, or we didn't agree on the budget before we submitted, and now we are a bit of a pickle. So please talk about the budget. You should also talk about the governance, management, and monitoring structure of the consortium and the modus operandi of the project as such, project monitoring and decision making. Use simple tables and Gantt charts. They can help, and you will also need Gantt charts in your proposal, so you can do that in one go. If you haven't found your consortium yet, there is help. there is a matchmaking platform available for the Marie Sklodowska career actions. There's also a partner search function on the core webpage. Have a look in your existing networks. Who have you met at conferences, workshops? Who have you had as a postdoc? Are they now independent? Would they be interested? Use your existing networks. And then if you are expected to be contacted yourself, is your internet presence up to date? How does your university or your company page look? Do you know what you can actually contribute to a project if somebody would ask you? And if you're unsure and what these projects look like, or if you want to know who actually took part, you can check for previous projects and who took part on Cordis, and we've provided a link here so you can have a read about and also read about what the objectives were for them, what topics they worked on, etc. So that's quite a nice bit of intel you can gain from there. Right. I said to have a look at the gender aspect as well. You have to keep in mind that every cell is sex and that everyone has a gender, and that it can add a valuable dimension to research and can take it in a new direction. And the aim is to eliminate gender inequalities and intersecting socioeconomic inequalities. It also makes research more responsive to social needs, and it enhances societal relevance of research and its outputs, and it ensures excellence and equality in outcomes and enhancing sustainability. In terms of data management, open access is key. So you should be encouraging the uptake of open science practices, enhance researcher skills in open science, and support reward systems. Open access to scientific publications and data should now nearly, hopefully, be standard. Immediate open access, or at least very short-term open access, that should be what you should have in mind. All the research data you create must be managed in line with the FAIR principles, and you will need a data management plan as a standard deliverable. And your open access to research data should be according to the as open as possible, as closed as necessary principle. And the way you use and describe the open science practices is actually part of the evaluation. So don't dismiss it or see it as a tick box exercise. It is really important. Right, then what to do with your results? You have to distinguish between dissemination, which is the promotion and raising awareness of project results, and the exploitation, which is the utilizing, and the communication, which is just making your research activities known. They are evaluated under impact, and they can be linked to training and research objectives. You have to think about who your target audience is, about if it's a one-way or two-way communications, what you actually want to achieve, and what activities actually can occur through the lifetime of your project, and not just communicate everything at the end. No, do it during the lifetime of your project. Impact is actually threefold. You have scientific impact, you have society impact, and economic impact. And it depends a bit on your project where the main impact are for your project. So it will not be balanced. Some will have more scientific impact, some will have more societal impact, and some will have a bigger economic impact. It really is based on your project, and there is no one-fits-all solution to this. But it's really important to think about it. And address it in your proposal. Right. I've already mentioned it before, the evaluation process and how does it work. So this is just a quick graphic of how it works. So the proposals come in, then there will be an individual evaluation of your proposal, then there will be a consensus group and a panel ranked list, and then the excuse me, the final ranked list, and you will receive the summary evaluation reports. As I said, there will be automatic pre-allocations of your 3 evaluators by RIA on the MSCA keywords you've used, so they're very important. If any of the evaluators think they have a conflict of interest, they make this known and they will be replaced. Also, you will have no 3 experts from the same nationality on one proposal, so there is a bit of diversity in the way they are evaluated. How it works, so as I said, there are individual reports. Then there is a consensus report after discussions, and all the evaluators have to agree to the comments and agree on a score. Then the consensus report is reviewed by the vice chairs of the panels for consistency and if they can be published in their form. And then the final version becomes the evaluation summary report, which is then sent to the applicant. And you can actually access the evaluation form the evaluators are using on the internet, and we've provided the link here. As we said, proposals are funded in ranking order. What you have to keep in mind, it is highly competitive, and you typically need a score of 90 to 95 plus, depending on the panel. So if you don't make it, especially the first time round, don't be too disappointed. It happens. If there are proposals that have the same score, there's a prioritization that is decided by the panel based on scores for the individual award criteria. So this is all laid out in the work program. And they can then go down further, looking at the gender balance of supervisors, the involvement of non-academic sectors, geographical spread, etc. However, in any case, there will be a justification on why one proposal with the same score has been ranked higher than the other one. And as I said before, the distribution of the indicative budget is proportional to the number of eligible proposals they received in a panel. Evaluation criteria, it's excellence, which scores for 50%, impact for 30%, and quality and efficiency and implementation of 20%. I'm not going through them because they're very detailed. You really have to go beyond the state of the art, interdisciplinary approaches, the quality of the training, really how this makes a difference to your doctoral candidates, and how you as a hosting organization actually contribute to that. As I said, there's the quality and pertinence of the project use and innovation objectives, the soundness of the proposed methodology, the quality of the training program, the quality of the supervision. That is something you should also not forget. The supervision needs to be up to standard, and that will be evaluated. As I said, how does it contribute to general early stage research training on a European level, the career perspectives, how do you maximize expected outputs and impacts, and then how you actually implemented, if your quality and the effectiveness of your work plan, the hosting arrangements, and so on. There are guidelines available for researchers at risk, for the Green Charter, for supervision, and especially also for attractive working and employment condition. And we have provided the links here. So please have a look at those. It would be going too much into detail to go through all of them now. And then we have also the network organization. How is it all set up? What are the tasks for every participating organization? What do the organizations have to offer? How do you do your risk management? How is your data management done? Do you have a clear decision-making and conflict resolution strategy? Do you have progress monitoring in place, and so on? Section 5 is on the environmental aspects in light of the MSCA Green Charter. So this has to be included as well. How will the project reduce the carbon footprint? How will the project increase awareness on environmental issues and promote sustainable behaviors and policies? What do the institutions already do in that aspect? And how will the project adhere to the Green Charter? Again, more considerations for the various sections. Operational capacity. Do you actually have the staff and to run all the project? Do you have letters of pre-agreement in place for a joint doctoral network, for example? So there are certain aspects that need to come in. Yeah, and with that, I'm already at the additional resources that there are. So as we said, there's the UKRO portal, the MSCA How to Apply web page. Very important, the work program. I told you, put them under your pillow, have them next to you. I also recommend the financial guide and the MSCA Net Handbook. There is a new project called Radiance that provides handbooks and FAQs. So we're expecting the Doctoral Network Handbook to being published very soon, and various other guides to documents on open science and gender in research. And with this, I will stop here and thank you all. There's our email address if you need to get hold of us. Please email that inbox and we will get back to you. And with this, I'll hand back over to my colleague Raquel, who will, I think, hand over to Eugen.
Thank you very much, Anya. Yeah, it's over to Eugen, who will go through his experience of applying and successfully securing 2 awards in the last round. Eugen also had a Marie Curie ITN in Horizon 2020, the previous framework program for research and innovation in Europe. So he's very expert in that field. So over to you, Eugen, to talk about your experience and some hints and tips.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to be here and to present my experience with the whole process of actually writing and submitting and then implementing such a doctoral network. As Raquel has mentioned, my name is Eugen Stulz. A little bit to my person, I'm Associate Professor in Bioorganic and Materials Chemistry at the University of Southampton, School of Chemistry and Chemical Engineering, and also associated with the Institute for Life Sciences. My specialty really is in DNA chemistry that we apply mainly now for medicinal applications, but also nanomaterials, microfluidics for energy and drug delivery. But I'm focusing more on the DNA side. I do not want to bore you with the research that we are doing, but more want to talk about the whole process from my point of view as a coordinator what you need to take into account. Some of it will be overlapping of what Anja has already mentioned, but hopefully I can give you a few more tips here. By the way, I haven't asked, is my presentation well visible here?
Yes, it is.
Okay, very good. And my laser pointer hopefully as well. So what I want to talk about is what I call the three phases. Phase one, before you actually start writing. Phase two, writing the proposal. And phase three, what you can then expect once you get the funding. So if you plan to submit in November and you haven't done phase one yet, meaning making your consortium, you can still do it. It will be tough, but it will take a lot of time. So as Raquel mentioned, I have been coordinating a Horizon 2020 network called OligoMed. This is still running. We had a 6-month extension due to COVID. It was 15 ESRs, 4.2 million euros, started January 2021 and is roundabout finishing now. You can find all the information on our website, so feel free to go and have a look at who we are in more detail. And in the last round, we got another doctoral network called On Track. Here we have 14 doctoral candidates, 4.4 million euros. That's in the early phase now, and we start next year to implement actually the project there. So there was also already a question I have seen about how high you should go in terms of what you ask for the project. We always aim to go as high as possible, but I would say between 10 and 15 PhDs is feasible and is perfectly fine to go. And we always maximize the number of person months that we ask for, so 36 months for the PhD to get the most out of it. But that actually depends really on your research and what you want to do. So I'm trying to, okay. For OligoMed, for the first one, we have 15 individual projects. So these are just really very briefly how they could look like. So ESR1 was in AstraZeneca in Sweden. That is very much a chemistry-based project, synthesis of DNA. We had one in Cambridge, which looked at the evolution of enzymes. So this is sustainability. So if this is feasible for your research, sustainability always goes down well. And then we had also one in Italy, looking at confocal microscopy, evaluation of DNA delivery and the mode of action. So this is really to show how interdisciplinary your project can and in principle should look like. So we have everything going from making DNA, improving the synthesis of DNA, to actually looking at how it works. So we spread the whole thing from synthesis to live evaluation. So this is something that you should bear in mind when you build up your research proposal. Be prepared that it could be a long journey. So this is our journey to OligoMed. We started 5 years before, so we had many resubmissions. We did score high, but always just about half of a percentage point below the threshold. So it's annoying, but this is what happens. Don't give up, resubmit. We initially started with ongoing collaborations that we had independently of each other. And at one point we came together and decided, yes, we want to go for it and we want to try it. And a number of people came in, and over the time with the resubmissions, our consortium changed. Members came in, dropped out, some last minute, but that is fine. You need to adjust as you go along and as the capabilities of your teams are. The last one we managed to get was bang on the threshold of the funding. There were 1,200 submissions overall, 18 were funded in chemistry, so we had a success rate of 8% there. This is pretty much what you are looking at. Now with the latest one, with On Track, we were more lucky. We managed to get it through the first time round. This is basically an evolution of the previous one. So we had a bit of change in composition. We lost some teams in France. We changed teams in the UK. We gained some more teams in Sweden. And these are our scores that we had: 4.9 in excellence, 5.0, 5 out of 5 in impact, and 4.7 in implementation. So this is really important to score as high as possible. And the excellence part, which counts half of your marks, is the important bit there as well. But don't neglect the other bits as well. If we had 4.7 in excellence and 4.9 in implementation, we would not have made it. And this is an overview of the last round. So you see the different panels that you have: chemistry, economy, engineering, etc. How many proposals were submitted that are eligible? So chemistry, where we were 166, cutoff score 97%. So this is what you're competing against, right? This is why it's important to really get it right and to score as high as possible. But as mentioned, if you don't make it, don't worry, don't give up, resubmit, and I will come back to that a bit later as well. So this is the composition of our consortium right now. Apologize for the colors here. So we are coordinating it. We have a number of academic partners in gray. We have industrial partners in this yellow-orangey color, and we have a hospital named in blue. So that, I think, is a very important point to make here. You want to be as diverse as possible in terms of the sectors. You need to have industry on board or non-academic sector partners. This is vital. You do not only need to be interdisciplinary, but also intersectoral, because you need to offer this kind of training to your ESRs. You need to give the students training in those sectors, transferable skills, think about career perspectives, but also the scientific and research training, of course, is very important here as well. It is not always easy to have third-party sectors or industrial partners on board as beneficiary. This is, in my view, not strictly needed. In the previous one, we had, for example, AstraZeneca as a beneficiary, but they have changed internally their recruitment process. They said, no, it's too complicated for us. We want to be a partner, but not a beneficiary. The important thing is you have them in there and you embed them within your proposal, and they help you with the training, whereby secondments, by giving lectures, etc. So don't just get a partner on board because you think it looks good on your proposal. They need to fit in your consortium and your project. So that is important there. There's also always a question going one slide back to our consortium map, whether you should have teams from Southern Europe, from Eastern Europe on board, whether that helps you to maximize chances. I don't think so. I don't think that this is a criteria that people will be looking at. We had teams from Greece on board, we didn't get it. We had Latvia coming in and dropping out, we didn't get it. We have Italy on board and Poland. One round we didn't, one round we did get it. So it's important that your team fits. And all over Europe, you find teams that do excellent research and that you may want to think about to bring on it. Okay, so think about your consortium. This is dictated by several factors. the science you want to do. This is a no-brainer. This is, of course, like you are the specialist. This is the science you want to do, the research that forms the core. Depends then who you know and who everybody else who you bring in, who they know. They will help you grow the consortium. I think this is the best way to build a consortium, because then you know the people quite well. It's important to consider how everybody fits in and also how reliable they are in helping you. And we'll come back to that in a minute. So it's not just a bunch of mates who think you can apply for a couple of million euros. That will not work. If you have a good friend you want to have in, but they don't fit, then don't do it. Really, it needs to work together. So the science you want to do is very important. You need to have your vision. That, of course, you have, but you need to put it really well on paper, what you want to do, why, what is the importance, what is the benefit for society, because the EU will ultimately want to know how does your research benefit the community if they give you potentially over 4 million euros in money. So what are you going to do with it, and how it is going to help the European society? What are training opportunities? How can you do that? State of the art, and how do you improve it? What are the career perspectives for students? That all comes out of your vision for the research and translates into the training, because it's all about the training. Expect that the reviewer is not a high expert in your field, so don't assume anything. Also state the obvious, make it clear, put it on paper. Even if it's for you, it's obvious. It may not be for the reviewer, and they will not go looking for answers for the questions that you have left unanswered. So I mentioned how everybody fits in. You need to think about how you structure your research. For example, certain teams make something, other teams then use them. That gives a feedback loop. Sorry. And that's how you build up your research proposal. Design your projects so that they can work in parallel. It may look good if you have a staggered start point in your project. So number of PhDs start 6 months or so before the other PhD students. It may look good on paper, but it's very difficult to implement. We always have all the PhDs starting at the same time. This will then again in practice be different, because different countries have different days where they recruit their PhDs. Roughly around about September, October, but also bear in mind the recruitment could go wrong. One beneficiary struggles to find a candidate, or one drops out shortly before they should start. So don't make it in a way that it all really depends on timing, right? Because it will most likely not work. To know the people is very important, not only during the writing, but even more so during the implementation. If you are a coordinator, you pretty much do everything. Right? You write the proposal, you give it your style, and you have oversight of what is happening, what you need, and where you need more information. So support from the consortium, it depends a lot on who is in there. Some do a lot. Most of them will help as needed, but are not really too proactive, and some do close to nothing. If you have somebody who is not responsive, then it's probably not worth having them on board. So you may need to make tough decisions, but that is only for the benefit of yourself and for the chances of success. Should you meet in person? Well, these days we do a lot online, as we do right now. It works. But for Oligomed, we had actually, over the years, 3 in-person meetings, one in Southampton, one in Brussels, and one in Ghent. I think the UKRO meeting rooms are not available at the moment, but hopefully will come back. And for On-Track, we only met online, but this is basically because it's mostly the same people, just a few new additions that we were working with before already. So it was okay to do it only online. I recommend, if you can, meet at least once everybody in person for about 2 days. And that helped us a lot for the oligomet submission, because we sat down, we looked at the proposal, we decided who's going to write what, and we basically wrote most of it in a day session, very intense. In the evening, you go out for dinner, for drinks, you socialize. Depending on how you do that, the next day may not be as productive as the first one, but still, it helps to build the consortium. It helps to build up this relationship between you, because that's what you will need for the writing, but also for doing the project. If you don't know each other and you have no connection, then it will not work. So, writing the proposal, be prepared, it takes a lot of time. It takes at least a few months to get this proposal written. It's 30 pages, may not sound much, but there is a lot that you need to think about in it. So my recommendation is start early. If you need to build up a consortium, I would recommend start in January. You will then hear in April the following year. But that gives you really the amount of time you need to write a good and strong application. Know the process, know the template. It's been mentioned by Anja. This is crucial. Use a staggered approach. Start with your seed idea and build up to define the projects and the work packages. Again, be prepared for a lot of work, especially the closer you get to the submission deadline. Be prepared to chase everyone repeatedly, because you need to have information from them for the part A, for the administrative part, but also you need their addresses, phone numbers, who the researchers are involved, their institution, what equipment do they have, what are the grant involvements do they have. These are all things that you cannot really work out yourself. You need their information, and if they don't give it to you, it's difficult. So chase them up all the time. Meet regularly with them. Keep everyone updated and in the loop where you are with the proposal, what information you need, what research you're doing, what are the projects, and what are the trainings, who is doing what, who is responsible for implementing your project. Each and every part that you write will have a lead beneficiary associated to it. So make it even throughout the consortium that everybody is involved in an more or less equal amount of work, but talk to them, make sure they know about it and they agree to it. Should you accept help? Yes, of course, by all means, accept every help you can get. I had the luck to have a really, really good local EU support office at Southampton, which was actually led by Raquel at the time. And one of her colleagues, Maud, she read the proposal and she highlighted every weak point that she could find. She knows the process and the templates very well. So she knows exactly where we would be short in terms of information. That was a really big help. So if you have a good local EU support office, make sure you use them. Bid writing agencies, are they worth it? It's difficult to say. We used one early on. We didn't get it, but they helped us to make a good template for it. They charge between 2,000 and 2,500 euros per beneficiary. So the larger your consortium, the more expensive they are. Sometimes if you don't get it, it's not a guarantee that you get it if you use these agencies. A colleague of mine used one, they didn't get it, but then they offered to the resubmission for free. So at least that can be an advantage of it. So if you have the money and you think it's worth it, go for it. As a coordinator, you pay a little bit more. than all the other beneficiaries. Obviously, everybody needs to agree and pay for it. They take away a lot of work, in particular for the administrative tasks and for the later part in the proposal. So they can be very helpful to do. Should you use Gen AI? I do admit I use ChatGPT. I learned a lot about it. And my view is Gen AI is here and it's here to stay. And I'm convinced a lot of people out there are using it. So why should we put ourselves into a disadvantage by not using it? Now, one thing I would never do is just copy paste from ChatGPT. Don't do that. That is a no-go. You're allowed to use Gen AI. There are guidelines of how you can use it and how you need to acknowledge it, so it's perfectly fine. But I used it, for example, to ask questions. What is the market value of my research? What is the outlook? Where are people needed? What are the career perspectives of my PhD students? But also about training. Where can I find meetings in Europe that would allow my PhD students to meet stakeholders, to meet policymakers, etc.? Yes, this is information that I could have found myself by searching the web, but I would have spent a lot of time, and ChatGPT gave it to me literally in seconds. So it saved a lot of time. And then, of course, you take it as ideas, you check is the information correct, and then you embed it in your own writing and in your own wording. So I do not have a problem to use Gen AI in the writing process, but use it mindfully and don't just copy paste. Adhere to the template. It's been mentioned. You cannot really change anything there. So the first thing you want to do is to consult the Doctoral Networks handbook. I found the one from last year. I haven't seen whether there's a new version out there for this year, but basically the template has things in it like here, quality of the supervision, and then required subheadings, qualification and supervision experience of supervisors. Well, this is it may look obvious, and the template gives you a bit of an idea of what to write, but the handbook really, that's your blueprint, literally speaking, pun intended. It tells you step by step what you need to put under this heading. And I recommend to really adhere to that. Go through it, tick as many boxes as you can, if applicable, and make sure that the information is in there that is asked for in this handbook. That's very important. That's a key to the success. It also gives you ideas about strengths and weakness from the evaluation summary reports. I'm not going into detail here. I will give you some of our own examples a bit later on. So there are mandatory parts and tables that you must keep, but nothing hinders you to add your own tables. Make it accessible. You cannot really change too much in the font. You can make use of the minimum size fonts. But don't change any of the layout as was mentioned by Anja. You can play with color layout to some extent, but not with the content. So this was one of our first submissions that we abandoned very quickly. If you submit something like that, you're not going to get very far, because 30 pages of text like that, no reviewer will enjoy that. Don't do that. Don't write it like that. So remember, you're not writing a patent application or a government document. Make sure you give it your own style. You want to stand out in a positive and accessible way, something that is easy to follow and digest. Make it colorful and friendly. Put in figures. So this figure pretty much summarizes one of our work packages. Then you describe what you're going to do in this work package, and you can refer to your PhD students to the graphic. ESR1 will do the first part, ESR2 will do the middle part, and the third one, the last part. They start at the same time to set up the system, and then they come together and work together. This really makes it accessible. Also show how you organize your consortium and your work packages, that what you have in terms of research you want to do and how it plays together, how they interact. So things like training, dissemination, and exploitation management, that's a given. You have to have that. But the rest, I would suggest between 2, maybe 4 work packages. I wouldn't go too high, and I wouldn't go too low in terms of work packages to make them well structured. You can use bullet points to condense the amount of information. Anya mentioned links. We always put in links. I never had a negative comment on the use of links, so I don't know whether the referees would actually go and look into them or not. We put them in, and it seems fine. But make sure you have highlight key text. Put it in a box. Give it column. Make it stand out so that reviewers can quickly see it and focus on it. And that's what you want. The message that you want to get across. Make it into tables. So a table can save you a page of writing. So here's skills, for example. What is the core skill that I want the PhDs to learn, and how do I do it? What is the training that I will give them? Right. Here again, impact. Put on the key impacts first. This is what you want to achieve. And then you can go into more details, societal, scientific, economic, etc. impact. Make it visible, accessible. So this table, for example, has gone down very well with reviewers, where we have all the people involved, the organizations, which PhDs do they supervise and co-supervise, what is their experience, how many PhDs have they supervised, and what is their expertise, right? It gives you a quick view of what your consortium is, who they are, and what do they comprise. So to make sure that each expertise that you need to do your project is covered by at least 2 beneficiaries, because otherwise what happens if one of them drops out? How do you cover then that key expertise? Is there anybody who can take over, or do you have to get a new beneficiary in, which is doable but painful? So make sure that the visualization of information is really helpful. You can ask questions. So we explicitly had questions at the beginning of paragraphs. For example, where can oligonucleotide therapies make a difference? This and this and this disease. Why is it difficult to implement, to bring new therapies onto the market? So these are the challenges: price, synthesis, off-target effects, delivery, etc. And then the key point, we will tackle these challenges by that. Make it clear, make it stand out. So what you want to do is you want to give it your personal note. You want to stand out. You want to stand out in a positive way. You want the reviewer to become your friend. You don't want to put them off on the first page. Remember, what you write will be carved in stone pretty much when you accept it. You can change, but that can be very painful. It can be different. Change of beneficiaries is possible, but difficult. Change of projects, change of any small changes actually will be difficult to do. Be mindful about the deliverables and milestones. There are some mandatory ones, but what you write is then what you are expected to do. So for example, in your project, you have 2 reporting phases, the first half and the second half. Make sure your deliverables are equally spread out so that you have a similar amount in the first reporting period and in the second, because then the report is basically a collection of your deliverables. And don't overdo it. Don't put in 50 deliverables because you think this looks fine. Have a meaningful set of deliverables per work package. Don't tailor them to the individual PhD, tailor them to the work package. Maybe 4 or 5 deliverables per work package, and then assign them to the different PhD students overlapping. Make sure everyone is embedded equally and reasonably within your project. This is a key point. Don't have anyone just added on but not embedded. That means you want to have your consortium really fixed early on. because if somebody drops out close to submission, you have to go through your entire document and eliminate every mention, every training where they are involved, every government structure, everything. It makes life difficult. Be careful about ethics. We had a statement in Oligomed where we said any data collected will not reveal names of individuals and no sensitive data will be collected. That was a big mistake. We should probably have said we will not collect any personal data, full stop. Because then the RIA said, this suggests that personal data may be collected within this project. This caused us a lot of grief because we had to give an extra 10 or 12 pages outlining what we are going to do, defining all the bacteria that we're going to do, all the cell lines, all human tissues, where they are from, are all the ethical requirements fulfilled. It gave us 4 extra deliverables around ethics, where we had to again then collect every data, put it into the deliverables and deliver it to the RIA. So if you use data involving anything vaguely alive, make sure that you state you do not collect personal data if you don't do that, right? Because otherwise you can be caught out. So be very careful about that. Group your work packages sensibly. Think about synergies and collaborations. This is a crucial part. Make sure all doctoral candidates are embedded, cross-linked between the projects, meaningful secondments. So this is, for example, one of my previous project descriptions. So it can be very brief. The layout has changed very slightly, but give it a meaningful title. 3 to 4 objectives, briefly describe what the PhD will do. Expected results, 2 to 4 expected results, what you want to come out. Secondments, I wouldn't go more than 3, maybe maximum 4 secondments, because that will get difficult to implement. So keep it, maybe even 2 secondments, between 2 and 4 secondments, I would recommend no more than that. Think about gender balance, open science, appropriate supervision, structure, etc. So build in lectures, training, transferable skills versus topic-specific skills. Build in network meetings at least once per year and intermittent online meetings. Think about local training and embed it all. Make sure the training covers all aspects from research over dissemination, industrial training if applicable, intellectual property, marketing, etc., transferable skills. It all needs to be there. And the better you structure it and the better you mention it, the higher your chances, because it's all about training. The descriptors have been mentioned. They have an impact on how the reviewers are being selected. So think about that carefully. So that can be decisive of who will read and evaluate your proposal. If you have the wrong descriptor, then it goes to somebody who doesn't understand it and they will not be happy about it. Don't miss the deadline. Obviously you won't, but it was highlighted. It's not 5 o'clock, it's 4 o'clock here in the UK. I normally had submitted about the first version about 24 hours before the deadline. You will hear that the website can get clocked closer to the deadline and it may crash and it may not work. I never experienced that. For me, it always worked up to the very last second. I then resubmitted the next improved version pretty much every hour on the last day, and in the last hour, maybe even every 10 minutes, I found somewhere something that I wanted to change. Oh, okay, change it, resubmit. I don't know who will get an email that this project has been submitted. I don't care. As long as you can submit your updated version, do it. And I normally had the last version submitted with a few minutes spare. So make use of it, but don't miss it out. After you submit it, it's really throwing the dice. Your chances are better to win the doctoral network than the Euro Millions, but it's still out there and it's in the hand of the reviews. You can guide it, you can help it a bit. Right. So I see I'm running short on time. I'm just talking too much, but if it didn't work out, take the comment seriously, change it, try again. These are some of the negative comments that we had in the past. So, for example, relevant scientific literature is not discussed, meaning we didn't have enough references in there. Meetings are not well addressed. The research-related training is not multidisciplinary. It's not the research, it's the training. Industrial partners' role overlaps more than complementing. Also, for example, the added value of participant X is not clearly presented. We had a last-minute addition of a spin-off company from a university. We thought it was a good idea. It wasn't, because we didn't implement them properly in the proposal. What you want to hear are positive comments. Work proposed is timely. Objectives are credible and feasible. This is a bit of a negative one. They said the projects are slightly too diverse and partially unfocused, but this is a minor shortcoming. I think we have been lucky here, because another reviewer could have said this is a major shortcoming. You don't know what you're doing. So keep an eye on that as well. Open science is mentioned. Pre-registration of study protocols is a positive aspect. So think outside the box. Think what you can add in terms of training, of supervision, that is not standard that everybody would put in there. Maybe you have your own idea, your own system, where you can bring the students together to have their own meetings, etc. Anything in addition is a bonus point. Right. How do I have? If you get it, you have a very busy initial phase. Project officer is very important. They are your contact. You need to be on good terms with that. Prepare a calendar with the deliverables. Make sure you have everything written down. You know what and when to report. Document any changes, any deviations. You need to have them approved by the RIA. Start recruitment early, but adhere to the correct process. You also need to lay that out in your project. Hold meetings with the consortium early on. Our project will start in January next year. You could, in principle, start from September, but I don't recommend that, because you also need to do the consortium agreement, which takes time. So I recommend to start January the next year, and then you have the first year to recruit everyone, because they need to be in place by month 12. Right. So make sure that everybody understands the finance, and it was mentioned, it's kind of an unwritten rule that the coordinator keeps 50% of the management contributions to themselves to employ a project manager. Make sure you mention that early on in your consortium, and that everybody agrees. When it comes to implementing it, it may be too late, because many of them will say, no, I don't agree to that. So make sure from the very beginning they know about it and they are happy with that. What did we get out so far? 34 publications. It's ongoing, still not finished. We organized international conferences. The IRT in Stockholm was co-organized. We made one in Bordeaux. We extensively worked on Wikipedia, all kinds of DNA chemistry, also translated into other languages where there was no entry, in Polish, in Catalan, expanded to German ones. We made short videos on YouTube, we participated in other networks. Public outreach, for example, think of Pint of Science in the UK. How can you disseminate your ideas and your research? So the kids these days, they really like social media, obviously. So embed it. Make sure they can contribute to that. They like to do that. And if it has an impact, all the better. Did we have challenges? Yes. Brexit. Mentioned international fees. We now have a fee waiver in Southampton, so make sure that you have discussed that with your institution, because the money will not cover exorbitant international fees. COVID played a very big role in the beginning. Hopefully we don't have that again. The war in Ukraine meant that we changed some of the locations. We were not in Ukraine, but close to. So people were very wary about that. We didn't find many cultural or national issues. So you will have students from all over Europe, all over the world. But all those that we recruited, they already had their experience of moving around, or pretty much all of them. So there wasn't really too much of an issue there. Beneficiary defaulting, that happened. It's very painful, but bear in mind that this can happen and you need to kick somebody out and get somebody else in. Getting deliverables done on time. In the beginning, okay. Towards the end, it drags on, so keep on it. And a key point here is extending the PhD past the ESR contract, because many countries ask for 4-year PhDs, but it only gives you 3 years. This is a constant criticism on the system and something that they still haven't taken on board. Why not give 4 years? Because most places ask for 4 years. So in Oligomed, we still have students going on, even though their ESR contract has finished. You need to find the money for it. Maybe you have RTN money left that you can pay. If they ask for the same amount, then you're in big trouble. If you can give them a normal PhD stipend, UK value, if you have that, fine, then you will need to do it. But it's particularly important for other parts in Sweden, in France, in Belgium, Netherlands. They need to find the extra money and they need to be aware of that. Okay, once you have it, don't forget to acknowledge it. This is apparently the latest version of how you acknowledge your European funding. You have to do that, whatever you publish, whatever you present, acknowledge it if you have the money, because we're very thankful for it. It has been, for me, a great journey, on track to about to start, but Oligomed has been really, really good. I really enjoyed it. It has brought a lot of good meetings, good bunch of PhD students together, excellent research being done. I think it's really well worth it. So I'm happy to take any questions in the time that we have left. But for now, I hand back to Raquel.
Thank you very much, Eugen. It was a very, very useful presentation and loads of hints and tips, and see what a successful application look like. And also, if you are unsuccessful, do not give up. And I think that was a good example in there. So thank you very much. There were several questions in the chat. I think we answered most of them, but one of the questions that kept coming up is about including an SME or industrial partner, whether they should include them or not, and maybe you can help us answering that question, Eugen.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would, if you have an SME or any industrial partner, if they fit your research, bring them in. It's vital. It's vital to have this industrial sector in it, to any sector that is outside of academia, because that gives transferable skill training, intersectoral training. In one proposal, we were criticized that our training is not multi-sectoral enough. I mentioned that. So yes, by all means, SMEs are good. If you have a big company that is a key player in your research and they are willing to participate, in particular in the training, by secondments, by giving lectures, by helping out in the meetings, that's good. It's not critical, I think, but it's critical that you have them on board.
Thank you very much, Eugen. I think that's a very useful answer. Any other questions? I can't see any hands up, or if Anya, I don't know if you want to bring in any more questions that you spotted there.
I haven't had a chance to go through the questions, but some of them are a bit out of my expertise. So industrial doctorate management, maybe Anya can comment on that.
We have one that might you be. What do you think would be a reasonable number of pages for the part B2? I said, don't make it War and Peace, make it short and concise. What is your opinion on that one?
It's difficult for the part B2. It has mandatory parts that need to be in there. I think we had about 20 pages for that one as well. But one part of it is really the description of the institutions. So that's mandatory. That takes a page each for the beneficiaries. And then you need to discuss your management team, your recruitment process, risk management. That roundabout maybe 10 pages. It depends really. I think follow the instructions and put the information in, and then you will see how far you go.
Thank you. We had another one on eligibility. Raquel, I think this is something we can handle between us. Is any higher education institute outside Europe eligible as a beneficiary? For example, a public university in Uganda. So this obviously depends. You have to be a EU member state or an associated country to Horizon Europe to be eligible to receive funding or to be a beneficiary. There are certain low and middle income countries that can receive funding. There are third countries, but they can receive funding due to their economic status, and there is a list available. And if I'm not wrong, Uganda is on it, but I would need to double check in this case.
I think I posted the link to associated countries or countries that can receive funding from the European Commission. So it should be available in the chat.
Yeah. And then also, Raquel, for us, and I think you provided the answer already, what is the difference between a multiple or a joint doctoral degree?
In terms of a joint degree, is one degree that is awarded by two institutions and is recognized by both institutions nationally. Multiple or double degrees are two degrees that are recognized by their institution. So it's a slightly different, so whether it's one degree or two or multiple degrees. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. And I think there is one just coming in for Eugen, and I'm not 100% sure what it is about, but do you work with LaTeX for the research proposal? I guess based on your slides, do you know of a public source for EU research proposals? Eugen, I think that was
no, I don't use LaTeX. It's standard Word. Well, I have a Mac, so I've given up on Windows. But I don't use LaTeX. I use standard Microsoft things. That's okay. So I don't know where you would find any support to use LaTeX for it. I find it easier because that's what I'm used to. Hope that helps. There is. I can see a question about building up an existing PhD network with Australia, Finland, and UK. An ideal number for the consortium is difficult to say. For me, it's round about 10 beneficiaries and between 5 and 10 associate partners. A colleague of mine has a total consortium size of, I think it's 27. For me, this is far too much. I cannot oversee that. There's no point. Between 15 and 20, yes, I can oversee that one. I really wouldn't go more than that. Make it such that the research you want to do can be covered. It really depends on that one. How far do you want to go and how much do you want to include in your research? When you start writing and you start thinking about what you can do and what you want to do, sometimes it starts from there and it spreads out, and somebody comes up with an idea, oh, we could add this type of project to it, and you find another partner that comes in. I don't think there is really an ideal number, but there is too much.
Absolutely
So,
agree.
round about between 5 and 10 is, I think, is fine.
Yes, and don't forget you're also limited by the amount of person months. So you have to stay within that limit as well. I think there is one more last question I think we have time for. There is one on the experience of the PhD supervisors, and if early career academics would be considered in a negative way. So in my opinion, no, as long as there are is support in place for these early career, that they get supervised themselves. Other than that, I think there is no negative impact because everyone starts at the beginning. So you should maybe ensure that you team them up with more experienced supervisors and make sure that they themselves get training. But I would not say that it has a negative impact on your project.
I would say, on the contrary, we also have one PhD supervisor who has not supervised any PhDs yet. She is fresh from a postdoc in an industrial position and is a main supervisor. So there is absolutely no negative comment on it. On the contrary, if you have a situation like that where you have a junior member of staff who hasn't got a lot of experience, you can mention it and you can embed it into a mentoring program. So you can say, look, we are also training young members of staff to become experts in supervision. So I think you can easily turn that into a positive point. So I would definitely not dismiss it, and I would not see it as a negative point. On the contrary, it's a good point. It's positive. Make it sound positive.
Raquel, it's 12 o'clock.
Yeah, it's 12 o'clock. I just want to say thank you so much to Eugen for a very, very useful and helpful presentation. Your insights were extremely valuable. So thank you very much for being here today for 2 hours. So thank you so much. Thank you to Anya for co-presenting the session, and thank you everyone for joining this session. We'll be circulating the slides, we'll be circulating the frequently asked questions and the recording. Eugen, I will ask you for the slides later on if you don't mind sharing them, and we'll put it in our UKRO portal
That's
for
fine,
the community.
Yes. I may redact one or the other information a little bit, but that's fine.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. So we understand that. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good rest of your day and weekend when you get there. And thank you for being here today. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Eugen.